him, and may he be exalted. In this regard, he cited the couplet, "Inwardly become acquainted and outwardly be like a stranger." This beautiful method is rarely found in the world. "Az darun sho ashna vo az burun bigane vash, in chenin ziba ravish kam mi bovad andar jahan." Jami concludes this section stating that Hazrat Bahauddin's attitude to remembering God while in the midst of an active life echoes Allah Ta'ala's words, and I quote, "Men whom neither buying nor selling distracts them from remembering God. Rijalun la tulhihim tijaratun wa la bay'un an dhikrullah." Today, because of a profusion of self-appointed Sufis, and also because seekers have difficulty in discerning authentic from inauthentic Sufis, seekers often look to a sheikh's silsila, which is his chain of transmission or lineage, as a means to authenticating a sheikh. This is, of course, similar to the means of authenticating a hadith. The same was true during the time of Hazrat Bahauddin. People had difficulty in discerning authentic sheikhs. Hazrat Bahauddin, however, did not put much stock in silsilas as a means of gaining knowledge of a Sufi. Jami expresses his attitude in the following question and answer. Note, in particular, Hazrat Bahauddin's pun on the word chain or silsila in his reply. Quote, someone asked him, "Whom does your chain of transmission, your silsila, reach?" He replied, and I quote, "No one reaches anywhere by means of such chains, by means of such silsila." Chains, in an ordinary sense, restrict people. How can you restrict when you are chained? But also, his point was to go beyond the means, the textual, the written means of authenticating a sheikh, and go beyond and use another form of knowledge. Hazrat Bahauddin recognized that a major obstacle on the spiritual path is that people have a tendency to criticize others instead of seeing their own flaws and correcting them. Hence, as Jami records, Hazrat Bahauddin stated, and I quote, "Blame yourselves, since whoever through God's concern for him, whoever recognizes an evil of his own self, and whoever knows his self's stratagems and ploys, for such a person this spiritual work is easy. There have been many who have traveled the path, who have placed upon themselves the sins of others and have endured that load." People often do not progress on the spiritual path because they view their faith, iman, as being too weak, or because they focus on the idea that in the past their faith may have been weak. Also, paradoxically, lack of progress on the path may derive from taking pride in having faith, in being sure that one's iman is strong. Hazrat Bahauddin, however, expressed an understanding of iman, of faith, that allows the spiritual traveler to get past these mistakes. For him, Allah Ta'ala is calling Muslims to embrace faith in God at each instant. In this, one's past performance is irrelevant. People get a new chance to embrace iman at every moment. So one aspect of Hazrat Bahauddin's method was to encourage spiritual travelers to renew their iman in Allah Ta'ala constantly. As Jami recorded, and I quote, Hazrat Bahauddin stated, and again I quote, God's words in the Quran, O you who have affirmed faith in God. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, aminu billahi. This alludes to the fact that at each instant, according to Hazrat Bahauddin, I'm quoting, this alludes to the fact that at each instant one must negate this physical existence and affirm God as the true object of worship. Sheikh Junaid Qudus Sirruhu said, and I quote, I have been reaffirming faith for 60 years. End quote. In speaking of re-embracing Iman, Hazrat Bahauddin also noted the importance of, and I quote, negating one's existence, end quote. This, however, is too abstract for many to grasp. Consequently, Hazrat Bahauddin clarified some preliminary steps to negating your existence, some preliminary steps that are more tangible. He said, and I quote, from our perspective, negating one's existence is the shortest path. But this will not happen except through abandoning self-will, tarki ikhtiyar, and seeing the inherent inadequacy of one's own actions, dide qusur a'mal, end quote. One must also abandon attachment to other than God, for as Hazrat Bahauddin said, and I quote, being attached to other than God is a great veil for the traveler on the path. Here he cited the couplet, attachment is a veil and achieves nothing. When you break these bonds, you'll be united. Ta'alluq hijab ast to bi hasili, chupeyvandha bugsali vasili. A concrete method of negating one's self-existence is to remember God. This is my own words. A concrete method of negating one's self-existence is to remember God by means of the Shahada. In discussing the meaning of the Shahadatain, Hazrat Bahauddin stated, and I quote, La ilaha negates the deity, the God that is one's physical nature, nafye tabiat. And illallah affirms that the true object of worship is God, haq jalla jalalahu. End quote. In this path, of course, the supreme human guide is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Hazrat Bahauddin Qaddasallahu Sirrahu states, and I quote, that the meaning of Muhammad Rasulullah, this consists of putting oneself in the station of following Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is the station of, if you love God, follow me, then God will love you. In kuntum tuhibbun Allah fattabi'uni yuhbibkum Allah. End quote. Elaborating further on the spiritual path as the path of following the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Hazrat Bahauddin stated, and I quote, our path is the trustworthy handhold, urwatul wuthqa. It is grasping the hem of following Hazrat Rasalat, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the path of following in the footsteps of the noble companions radiallahu anhum. On this path, through just a little effort, great openings, futuh, occur. But taking care to follow the sunnah is a great deed. Whoever turns away from this path is in danger of losing his or her religion. Now I'd like to summarize briefly some of the main aspects of this mirror that is the path of Hazrat Bahauddin Naqshband Qaddasallahu Sirruhu, this mirror of